Welcome. I'm Trevor White, the host of It's All Relational. And over the next couple of weeks, we are going to be using our podcast platform to highlight the 50 years of WAMFT history and interview former leaders and presidents of our organization. In this series, we are going to be highlighting some of the major, accomplishments of our organization and some of the trials and tribulations that we've been through. This is all leading up to our anniversary celebration at annual conference this year, September 25th, where we're going to get together and we're going to have a panel talking about WAMFT history. We hope to see you there. And in the meantime, enjoy the show. All right. Welcome to It's All Relational. We are continuing our WAMFT 50 series where we're talking to significant important members from the WAMFT legacy as we approach 50 years of existence. And I'm joined today by Scott Edwards. Thank you so much for being here today, Scott.
It's wonderful to be here, Trevor.
Yeah. Now, Scott, we should acknowledge a dual relationship, right? You know, you were my professor and supervisor at SPU when I was there. And so, because of that, I brought my Coca-Cola because
good thing I've got mine as well. Yeah.
You love Coca-Cola, or Coca-Cola, as they say in your neck of the woods.
As in from Rome, Georgia. Yeah, it's Coca-Cola.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So Scott, you served in a number of capacities for WAMFT, but could you tell us a little bit more about you and what brought you to this field in the first place?
Great question. When I was doing my undergraduate work, I was majored in psychology and wanted to do something and have purpose, right? So I went and worked at a wilderness camp in the mountains of North Carolina for 3 years with juvenile delinquents. Great experience, great to do when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
They made changes, and like every 6 weeks, they would go home for 4 days, which was a year-round camp, and then I would see they had the same problems.
Right.
And they had family workers and family therapists there, and that's when I first got interested into the field. Was like, it's something more, right? That there's a lot more with families, and so then I went on and got my master's at Auburn down in Alabama, and I started learning all the theoretical language for all the stuff I'd been doing for 3 years. Right. That really got me interested into the field and did some home-based therapy after my master's, and then went on and got my PhD at Virginia Tech, which brought me out to the West Coast. And was in Oregon for a couple of years doing my doctoral internship, and then came up to Seattle Pacific in 2001.
Yeah. Now, you were kind of mentioning that you have a unique perspective coming into WAMFT before you even joined the board, that you'd been on other regional, marriage and family therapy boards.
Yeah, so when I was a student in Alabama, I was on the Alabama Association of Marriage and Family Therapy as a student and associate rep for 2 years. And then in Virginia, the same for 2 years. And then when I went to Oregon, I was elected treasurer, and I lived in Oregon for 2 years. So it served, prior to my time coming to Washington and WAMFT, I'd served in 3 other divisions.
Right.
2 years each. And so moving here in 2001 and 2002, I joined the legislative committee for WAMFT. And then shortly after that was elected treasurer, and then became president-elect for 2 years, and then president for 2, and then past president for 1.
Yeah.
And then served on the central board of WAMFT, which is Canada and the U.S. So it's called the central, not the national. Yeah, so I've served for good long, I think it was like 12 or 13 years straight at the divisional level.
Yeah. Wow. And like you're saying, multiple roles, multiple capacities in different regions. So, we are familiar with our current kind of legislative challenges, obviously, that we're dealing with and things that we're trying to push forward. But take us back to 2001, 2002, when you first got on the board. What were some of the things that you were wanting or that you were working on the legislative committee?
Yeah. So right before I came to Washington, licensing laws passed in Washington. Right?
Yeah.
And so in terms of the credentialing for states, every state credentials its own professions.
Yes.
There's registration, there is certification, and then licensure. Right?
Yeah.
And prior to licensure, it was just registered counselors, and that was just a big catchment area.
And that was for everybody? Like that was anyone that was...
You would pay $40 and you could register, and you just would say what your theoretical perspective is and just write it down. And basically they check your address and take your $40 fee, and you get a certificate that looks like your license. So, and actually when they got licensure, the registration certificate looked identical to the license.
Oh yeah.
So after several years, after 2 or 3 years, the public was really confused.
Right.
Registered counselors, and And actually, people were choosing to remain a registered counselor than get licensed because if you got licensed, then you had more liability and accountability with the state and for the
Right.
profession, and you had to
Right.
get CEUs, and the
Yeah.
registered counselor didn't. So
Yeah.
there was this push and effort to
Yeah.
address that registered counselor
Right.
credential
Hmm.
and to get rid of that
Hmm.
and to
Hmm.
make it more robust. Right. So
Right.
being on the legislative committee, we were working on with Cheryl Storm and Christy Lean, and then I came in at the tail end of that for all the supervision requirements and regulations, got into
Right.
those acts,
Right.
and then after that, then was revamping the registered counselor. And so
Yeah.
I was president at the time and served on the legislative task force.
Hmm.
Also served on the governor's work group, or maybe it was a legislative work group, governor's task force,
Yeah.
and I was one of the three principal authors of the associate licensing law.
Wow.
Yeah,
For
so I used to have nightmares about the administrative code.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. So, but you were, and at the time, WAMFT was really instrumental in at the state level at ushering in some of these regulations and, safeguards. I mean, obviously, these are important for therapists, right?
Mhm.
Now, but especially important for the public because, creating the kind of gatekeeping element is so valuable, such an important part of what we do with supervision and what we do, what we try to do with WAMFT, obviously, to be able to make sure people that are therapists are seeing clients are, have the requirements and are able to do it. Right?
Yeah, in the legislative process, having spoken in Alabama, I went to
Right.
Montgomery,
Yeah.
and as a Virginia, went to Richmond, and then also Virginia is close to DC, and so the AMFT leadership conferences, where all the different leaders from around the country and Canada would come and lobby on in DC on Capitol Hill, and also in Oregon. So I've been in a legislative process in a lot of different state and also our national level. Laws can be passed, but then what's the administrative code, right? So there's some timing, and so it's not just a one-time
Hmm.
conversation, is over time, right? So
Right.
several
Right.
years that it takes. I remember there was one time we had WAMFT had its own lobbyist, and we started our own political action committee. There was no
Yeah.
need for that at that time, and I remember one day was sick.
Hmm.
I stayed home. Someone covered my class at SPU, and Carrie Morris, our lobbyist at the time, called me up and said, "Hey, I need you to write some legislation today." Right. And the social workers were trying to restrict the practice context for all the associate license level clinicians.
Oh, wow.
And the name of social worker, it was independent clinical or independent social worker and also
Right.
and that word independent, was it an adjective of doing independent work or was it independent clinical social or independent
Yeah.
social worker?
Right.
And we had an assistant attorney general ruling on what that meant. But there was some confusion, and the
Right.
social workers proposed a bill for all three professions of mental health counselors, social workers, and family
Yeah.
therapists
Hmm.
that you could not be an associate and be in a private practice.
Wow. Wow. That's
And
a
so
huge, that obviously huge ramifications if that,
huge, right? Yeah.
yeah.
And so for our profession, right? And also for, I
Yeah.
think, the public as well. And so
Yes.
by having done the political action committee and having those that
Mhm.
work done to actually pass it, now they're going for the kind of the more how to enact it. In that afternoon, I wrote a legislation. I took what the social workers were proposing and
Mhm.
carved out family therapists and mental health counselors
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
proposed legislation that was just for social workers.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
was a language that they were proposing for everyone,
Right.
and that passed out of committee.
Great.
And then the
Great.
social workers dropped the issue.
There you go.
So there's
Yeah.
a lot that behind the scenes for all the leaders, even
Yeah.
after me. I know Julie Wood was president after me, would continue on, right?
Mhm.
Making sure there was clarity of protecting our profession. So every 3 or 4 years, some things would come up, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's such a huge part of what we think about with the legislative work at WAMPT, obviously, is, the kind of, table stakes are protecting the profession, right? And making sure that we, maintain our license, that we are, kind of have our own license, the own requirements, and, beyond that, trying to kind of advance legislation that's going to be valuable for the profession
Mhm.
and useful, right? And when you look back at some of the legislative work you did, what were you most proud of?
I was most proud of the associate licensing laws.
Yeah. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
to me, that was a 3 year process,
Yeah.
serving on
Yeah.
a legislative work group,
Yes.
governor's task force.
Yeah.
I mean, we were down there every month, right?
Mhm.
A couple
Mhm.
times a month down in
Right.
Tumwater or Olympia.
Yeah.
and working with a lot of different constituents, right? So I
Hmm.
got to know a lot of people from around
Yeah.
the state in different capacities,
Right.
right? So that was also helpful in terms of promoting WAMFT, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
At the same time, not every state at that time had licensure laws, right? And
Yeah.
so later on, when I did my work and service to our AMFT itself,
Yeah.
right? A couple of years after that, every
Hmm.
state and Canadian province had passed some type of licensure
Right.
law and got to celebrate in that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ongoing work in
Right.
that. Yeah. So and
Right.
that's what I'm most proud of.
Absolutely. And it's a huge, I mean, huge accomplishment moving, from, this kind of certification process, registration process to, licensure, much more robust, obviously better for therapists, better for the people. It's a really meaningful accomplishment that WAMP was a part of that you spearheaded. Now, tell us more about what were some of the other challenges confronting WAMP at the time? What were some of the other initiatives that you took on?
Yeah, great question. Because I think, as I shared earlier, and you've heard me say in teaching, right? I think in concentric circles, right?
Mhm.
So that larger one is our state, right, and kind of our profession. But within WAFT itself, right? Of course, we were wanting to build a more robust association and had a
Yes.
lot of energy, right? So we took a look at our mission and vision statement
Hmm.
and had some retreats. I think kind of my work with Tess Wiggins prior to when I was president-elect, we worked on the vision and mission statements. And I just looked on the website and the words are tweaked a little bit, but it's basically the same, right? We
Yeah.
network, educate, and advocate, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so like everyone had that memorized. We knew it, right?
Yeah.
So that was good. That pulled us together. And then when I became president, we actually reorganized the structure of the board itself. We
Hmm.
used to have 4 at-large board positions, and that was geographically based.
Right. In the different
One
areas.
in Seattle, right? One east of the Cascades, one west of the Cascades, north of Seattle, and one west of the Cascades, south of Seattle. And each of those representatives had to do trainings and seminars, right? So it was more functional versus visionary.
Right. Right.
And so coming out of our mission and vision statement, I spearheaded a retreat where we kind of rewrote everything. And so we had 8 at-large positions instead of 4,
Yeah.
and they became visionary. It
Hmm.
wasn't tied to actually having to do something in the region that you lived in. And we kind of got rid of the regions. And
Right.
we had the elections committee then was charged with making sure there was diversity, not just geographically, but
Yeah.
also diversity with gender,
Yeah.
with race,
Right.
and ethnicity, and other aspects, right? Making sure that
Yes.
there's the slate. And so we actually had people running off for these positions.
Hmm.
When it was hard to fill 4, we had more people than 8 people interested for the visionary positions. And
Yeah.
that actually built
Yeah.
a lot of momentum for our association.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge shift, right?
Yeah.
We've recently kind of restructured the student because student leadership was geographic again, right? It was both of them where there's two student leaders. One was supposed to be east, one was supposed to be west, but similarly, we've restructured that because it just doesn't work for our state as well, right? Our state is population concentration in areas that doesn't kind of fit as neatly into geographic regions like that.
Yeah. And thinking isomorphically, right? The National Association or the Central Board
Yeah.
was focused geographically around state licensure
Yeah.
and
Right.
provincial credentialing. So
Yeah.
that made sense that then the divisions are focused on that too,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And once that got done, it kind of released it so you could have more interest groups. That's where the interest group stuff came about.
Right.
And part of that came out, Tess and I at a national leadership conference or the Central Leadership Conference. Tess had the idea of mentoring,
Hmm.
right? Our student associate members.
Yeah.
And
Right.
had some conversations on how to do that and came back with the idea about mentoring, not to where WAMFT would pair people up, but
Hmm.
WAMFT would create an event, a day where people could pair themselves up,
Right.
right? And so
Right.
that WAMFT would be responsible for mentoring into the profession and having that space, as
Yeah.
opposed to micromanaging who connects with who
Right.
for their own development.
Right.
And then we shared that with other divisions too.
Yeah.
So that was back at that point, and then started the awards
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
honor. So all that was kind of coming at that point, which was away
Right.
from the geographic focus into what's our purpose and our vision and how do we
Totally.
move forward. Yeah.
And now these things you're referencing here, Scott, these are still, huge mainstays of the WAMP's calendar, right? Mentorship Day is coming up
Oh, that's
this
awesome to
fall.
hear.
It's going to be, it continues to be a really meaningful part of the process. And it's kind of interesting tying into what you were saying earlier, that part of what we're doing in Mentorship Day this year is helping new graduates start their private practice, your associate, license work, playing a role with that. And the awards ceremony, which is we now as part of our kind of holiday party, that's a huge way to recognize people that are doing great work across the state. And that, what was the vision there, as you started that?
Yes, I started that with that was an initiative Tess started her last year as president, and so she and I developed those different categories with the board did too. I mean, it
Hmm.
wasn't just us, right? Yeah, just to honor the legacies and the
Right.
contributions of
Hmm.
members, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we're in a field where we don't brag about ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so to
It's
have
kind
an
of private
opportunity,
stuff we do, it's
yeah, we
kind
can brag because we're serving others, right? We're not doing it
yeah,
for our own accolades, right? And
totally.
ways in which where we can put that forward, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so we had it at the Rock Salt. I don't think it exists anymore. It was down on Lake Union.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
At a place, did it there, and did that in combination always the night before our annual conference.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Yeah. I think that we've talked about doing that, something like that again,
Yeah,
because it's neat to tie more things in. That's the time where we're most likely to all be together, right? As the annual conference.
yeah, yeah.
So
And that was pre-COVID and pre
right.
what we're
Right.
doing now, right?
Mm.
In terms of
Yeah.
the media. And so conferences, you did come together, right? In person.
Yes. Right.
Had a different feel for that and a different need for that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look back at your time at WAMFT, you're obviously you served, these different new geographic regions for like 10 years. A lot of accomplishments, right? A lot of things that were really meaningful and important. And you were given an award that was pretty specific to this as well for this.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, the AMFT Division Contribution Award,
Yeah.
and that's one that at least minimum of 10 years of contributions at the
Yeah.
divisional level with some major impact into the profession.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was a year the AMFT conference was in Sacramento, California.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was back when my father was still alive. And so both my parents flew out from Georgia
That's
to
awesome.
be a part of that. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was an honor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you look at it, associate licensure, mentorship day, the supervision requirements, the political action committee, the awards ceremony and dinner, you've had a pretty big impact, right? On WAMP and a lot of what you and your board did during that time, right? Because I know it wasn't just you, but is meaningfully felt still, right? There's definitely a lot of the structure of WAMP is still organized around these things. So it's just a really neat thing to see. So, when you go to WAMP events now, what's it like for you?
It's different. I'm out of academia,
Yeah.
uh, although I do a little bit of adjunct teaching here on the side here and
Yeah.
there. But in terms of going back, it's rejuvenating, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's been a couple of years since I've been able to the timeframes to fit to go back,
Right.
right? So I've
Right.
been doing some of the conferences online.
Hmm.
I know the last Christmas
Hmm.
or holiday celebration,
Yeah.
right? I was out of town when that happened, so it's just good to meet
Hmm.
new professionals in the field,
Hmm.
right, and
Yeah.
reconnect with old friends, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, there's a huge need for our profession, right,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
support the professionals,
Right.
right, in addition to protecting the profession itself.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been asking everyone, when you think about, we are at WAM 50 here, when you think about WAM to 100, what would you love for that to look like? What do you hope for?
Oh wow, I haven't thought of that before. Well, I think in terms of the profession itself,
Mhm.
right, to make sure there's still a profession that's
Yeah.
viable. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Because I know that the family therapists are one of the 5 core mental health disciplines recognized by the federal government,
Yeah.
right? And to have that still as part of
Right.
government's ebb and flow, right? States ebb and flow.
Right.
And there's such a need for relational
Yeah.
therapists that
Right.
get relational dynamics, right? And
Yes.
so I think right now we can all be focused on what's AI going to do, right? And I
Yeah.
remember back in 2000, it was what's the internet going to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Right.
And there's advantages. We're able to connect differently now across the country
Yeah.
without barriers, right? So that actually enhances connections, right? But
Yes.
also the quality of the connection, we're not in person, and so we lose something too, right? And
Yeah.
so I
Right.
think as humans, our culture is going to continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to I take it from symbolic experiential
Mm-hmm.
therapy,
Yeah.
where you create a context for different type of dynamics
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
occur.
Right.
And I think that was kind of part of my envisioning in my leadership with
Mhm.
WAMFT was how can we create structures to allow different things to occur.
Yeah.
And I think going ahead, how can WAMFT continue to develop
Mhm.
structures
Yeah.
for still relationships to occur and for us to support people in relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I have a biopsychosocial spiritual perspective on mental health, and I
Yeah.
think
Right.
faith is important,
Yeah.
and there's probably going to be expand by the time we in 50
Yeah.
years, right? And
Right.
so I just see that there's some solid structures that
Mhm.
also has some flexibility, and really
Totally.
attends to the needs of the communities.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you can definitely. I hope as you look back at it as part of this process, that, as you prepare to our conversation today, looking back on the work you've done, you've done a lot of that, right? Create structures that still exist, right? And have been able to, be evolved and, kind of, have stood the test of time though, right? I think that that's for any of us, what we hope in leadership, that you do something that, can be inspiring and can continue, right? And can be useful in different ways to different people in the future. And that's, I think what we all, hope for with this organization is it continues to grow and evolve, to meet the needs of our, ever changing profession. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today,
Well,
Scott.
thank you. And it's lovely to hear you reflect on it that way too, right? Kind of put it kind of in that legacy. And so I'm
Hmm.
honored to be able to have this conversation and yeah, and yeah, well, and to continue to serve WAMFT, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
as being a resource and as a
Yeah.
part of our community, right? We're
Right.
all in this together.
Yeah. Well, we really hope you're there. The annual conference this year, we're going to have an event, celebrating WAMFT, and it'd be great to have you there and be able to, kind of continue
Is
this
it down at
conversation.
Great Wolf Lodge?
Great Wolf Lodge this
Okay,
year.
yeah.
Yep.
I saw that coming through the material. Yeah, so
Bring
I'm
your
gonna try to make
swimsuit, you
if I
know?
can. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, yeah, they got the Coca-Cola will be there.
yeah. Cheers to that. Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining today, Scott. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much, Trevor.